Morning and welcome to today's webinar. We're thankful that you're here joining us this morning. Today's webinar is being the general contractor and everything that's required to conduct those services. The presenters for today will be Dwayne Schmitz and Josh Kozlowski. As with all of our webinars, we'd like to thank all of our partners who share this important information with all of their members. Tri-State Safety Association, MPMA, South Central Safety Association, BIA of the Red River Valley, ABC North Dakota and Minnesota Chapter, NRASP, Build Connection, and Lakes Area Manufacturers Alliance. For those of you that are new to OECS, thank you again for joining and welcome to today's webinar. We offer a total safety solution for all the companies that we work with, manufacturing through construction and anywhere in between. We have offices in the Twin Cities as well as in Fargo. Your involvement today is very important. Please enter all your questions into the chat for our panelists. I will be monitoring the chat throughout the webinar, and we ask that you hold all your questions until the end. Then I will read through the chat questions and allow Dwayne and Josh to respond to your questions. We do not share this presentation, but we do provide a video on our website within about 24 to 48 hours. We have several learning outcomes in this webinar today. One, defining your role and your responsibilities as a GC, understanding what you need to enforce when it comes to OSHA compliance and regulations, identifying how to mitigate risks and what are common job site hazards, learning best practices for training and accountability, and finally, understanding what you should provide to your subcontractors. Many of you joining us today need to utilize this webinar to obtain CEU units. This webinar is approved for 0.1 CEU. Upon completing this webinar today, an assessment and an evaluation will be emailed out to everybody that's in attendance. If you need to have this CEU, please complete the assessment and evaluation in the email, and a CEU certificate will be issued. If you have any questions, you can contact Jennifer Erickson at jennifer@oecscomply.com for more information.
Hello, everybody. My name is Dwayne Schmitz. I will be working here with Josh, going through the general contractor requirements. Good morning, everyone. And a little bit about myself. Served 34 years in the military. Came over to OECS. Been with OECS for a couple of years. At OECS, I do forklift, scissor lift, train the trainers, OSHA 10 certification, first aid, CPR, reasonable suspicion. So I look forward to talking to you about some of the things we see out on the job site. And this is Josh.
Yep. Thanks, Dwayne. So my name is Josh Kozlowski. I'm one of the newbies with OECS. So I've been here a little less than a year. I actually started as an apprentice. I was out in the field, worked my way up, foreman, superintendent, and then eventually project manager. So for over 80% of my career, I've actually worked for general contractors. So what we're hoping is you guys get a couple of tidbits that you guys can take with you, utilize on your job sites, and maybe answer a couple of questions if you have some.
All right, with that, we will start in with our general contractor requirements. So the first thing we want to look at is establishing a safety plan. So when we get into the general contractors, one of the first things when I went on site and OSHA showed up is they want to look at the AWARE program. So the AWARE program, they want to make sure it's clearly stated goals, and then also the objectives for meeting those goals. And the next thing we want to look at then is the assigned responsibility. And we'll talk about this a little later also in the presentation, but who's the competent person on site? Who's your subs competent people? So those are ones that would be looking at your trenching. They could also be looking at scaffolding and so on. So we want to make sure they're identified. Who's responsible for company safety? Who is the company contact for any critical decisions? Make sure we can correct that on the spot. And what are the company's personal responsibilities, subcontractor, supervisor, foreman. Identifying hazards, we'll go in depth on that in a little bit, but who's the competent person on site who can make instant corrections if they do find hazards out there? How do they identify them? Hazards specific to the trades, making sure others around are aware and anticipating hazards. So kind of that forward look to see what may all of a sudden turn into a hazard. Be as simple as weather or another trade doing something. Training and communication documentation is a key thing when we get into this. So make sure they're all trained on the hazard specific. Also, employees, they've been trained on site specific hazards. That's going to get into our orientation part to make sure we're documenting that. Temporary laborers, anyone we're bringing in as a temp, they're the ones that we want to make sure are also trained and orientated to it. We've run into that a couple times where a temp agent sends someone on site and they don't have the proper training. Toolbox talks, reporting unsafe conditions, reporting accidents, incidents, near misses. When we get into accident investigation, we'll talk on that about who will investigate accidents, where are the accident investigation, where are the accident investigation forms, first reports, where are they kept? Are they online? Are they in the trailer? List of significant phone numbers. What is the address and phone number where the OSHA 300 logs kept? And who's the contact person during regular hours? And methods to inform the company subcontractors. And then we'll look a little bit about enforcement. What does that look like for you? Your safety rules and regulations, your disciplinary system that you may use, and also who's responsible for enforcing your safety rules on site. And then they'll also take a look at your Minnesota Right to Know, your HAZCOM. That is the written program. And then also a copy of the safety data sheets on site or online, as long as it's readily accessible for the employees and subcontractors of the job site. Josh will talk more about risk assessment and how that looks.
Yep. So our risk assessment process is 5-step process. So our first would be identifying hazards. Second would be assessing those hazards. Our third step would be develop controls to remove or reduce risks relevant to the hazards. Number 4 would be implement those controls. And number 5, supervise and evaluate. So basically 1 and 2 are your assessment steps. So risk assessment, identification, and figuring out what those hazards are on your job sites. Steps 3 through 5 are your management steps. So you're putting your controls in place and your processes to make sure we're negating any hazards or potential hazards on our job sites. So the goal of the entire process is to manage risk by taking corrective action before a loss were to occur. So risk management processes, there's a couple of different methods that can be utilized to control and see what existing hazards are on your sites. So some rely slowly on walk-around inspections by first-line supervisors. Others go through formal analysis of different parts of the operation, and some use a combination of methods. We're going to focus on a couple of the more effective processes today, including the job hazard analysis, commonly known as a JHA, and risk assessment worksheets. So JHAs are a great safety tool to utilize as they help to get everybody thinking about safety. So we want to be writing down our work scopes, hazards, and steps to control them. And this creates a living document. So we can keep using this throughout. And as our job sites are changing, making sure we're updating and changing that as well. So they should also be shared and discussed with all of our trades on site. So it's one of those things that it creates accountability by everybody on site using it. So in the event OSHA comes out to our sites, the more safety documentation you can present, the better. A lot of the times in OSHA's eyes, the way they look at it is if it's not written down, it didn't occur.
I'll talk a little bit about the risk management process, this risk assessment worksheet. I kind of like this form because it puts in who is going to be the one implementing it. And so it has a name. So we want to look at the risk management. You fill out the hazards with no control measures at first. You then apply the rating of that hazard. The lower the rating, the greater the hazard. And then what control measures are you going to put in place? And then again, who is the one that's going to oversee or make sure those control measures go in? And then you should get a higher rating, meaning that it's been more secure. So Josh, when you're out on job sites, how often do you see subcontractors actually doing a JHA or a risk assessment of the scope of work on site?
I can say this much that it's gotten better, but there's still a lot of area for improvement. And the big thing is, I'm starting to see, especially some of the bigger contractors that are requiring it, that it has to be done daily. And they should be done daily because your job site's constantly changing. So what's there today is going to look a lot different to what's there tomorrow.
And what I've seen is also at times a general contractor gets overwhelmed with all the different subs on site. So they have a hard time going and ensuring and trying to make a safety plan for their scope of work. Um, I feel it's better if when the sub comes on site, they just do a JHA quick 15, 30 minutes, fill one out, turn it into the GC, and all he has to do then is really enforce the safety standards that they have told him they're going to do. So you kind of get that buy-in from the GC down instead of having some of that rift like, oh, the GC wants this. And so it helps eliminate some of that, but also makes it easier for you to hold them accountable.
Yep, absolutely. So on this slide here that you guys see, so hierarchy of hazard controls, we utilize this here at OECS in all of our trainings. And it kind of is a good reference looking at it. How are we looking at different controls on our job sites? So what we want to do is, as we're looking at our sites and we're utilizing those JHAs and risk management worksheets to control hazards, we should think of ways that are most effective in reducing or preferably eliminating those hazards altogether. So as you can see in this diagram, PPE is our least effective and last line of defense. That's why PPE should be a non-negotiable on all of your job sites. Examples would be hard hats, safety glasses, gloves, hearing protection, etc. And we'll get into that a little bit further here. We should exhaust all other options before relying on PPE to control our hazards. An example would be a worker has to get up into the ceiling and do some ceiling work or install some lighting. So instead of using a ladder where there's that fall, a fall hazard could be present, we would substitute and have them use a scissor lift. Now they have a guardrail system, they have a working platform to work off of, and it's just a lot safer method of doing that work scope. So that would be an example of using a substitution control, which is just a lot safer.
Another thing I've seen too on the job site is one of my siding company uses cement board, and so they always have a silica thread with it. And then another one of my siding companies uses a wood base instead. And so again, that's another form of substitution. But the biggest thing we want to do, elimination.
For our compliance here today, items we're discussing can be referenced in the Title 29 of the Code of Federal Regulations. The 1926 refers to the construction industry standards, or another fancy word for standards is rules. So there's also the 1910 OSHA regulations, which is geared more towards general industry, but this can also overlap and be referenced for citations in our construction work scope areas as well. So the Minnesota Chapter 182 statutes is the Minnesota law that gives power to MinOSHA to regulate workplace safety and lays out rights and responsibilities for employers and employees in Minnesota. So think of the Chapter 182 statutes as the Constitution, and then the 1926 and 1910 as the rule book.
We're going to start talking about training and orientation for the job site. Again, document it. Need to have normally a binder that has the outline of your checklist of the orientation, and that should be fluent to be changing with the different hazards and stuff you see on site, and making sure you understand and can brief the new people that are coming on site. And so with that, then there should be a sign-in roster, and this should be readily available. It's another thing when OSHA comes in, they ask where, they ask for HAZCOM, and then they normally will go to your site orientation. And part of that site orientation is you can walk the site with the new individuals so they have a full understanding of what's going on. Implementing your safety rules. So if you're putting a set PPE standard on the site, high-vis vest, hard hat, safety glasses at all times, then that's the rule, but you're going to establish and make sure they understand that. How and where to report incidents. They might just go to their direct supervisor. As you as a GC walk in the site throughout the day, they should feel more comfortable to approach you and bring up the ideas if they see something. If someone for some reason would get injured on the job or seek some medical attention, what is your return to work policy? You know, do we need that doctor's note sign saying they're good to go, or are they going to come back and say, "Oh, I'm good," and they come back to work and may not be cleared?
Yep.
I mean, that'd be a big risk, period.
Right.
And then we get into the SDS. Again, SDS sheets for all chemicals. So all the subs should be bringing their SDS to you. You should show them where that binder is or how they can gain access to it, so it's readily available for them. You want to check also their certs, right, for all-terrain forklifts, MUPs, whatever it might be, ensuring they have certification. Because again, if OSHA comes there and finds people operating, you could also be in a violation, get a violation from OSHA for that. Emergency action plan, we'll talk about that in a little bit. Compton person list, so you have it at the ready. Inspection docs of MUPs and equipment on site to make sure that it's being inspected every day before use. And then what's your enforcement level? We talked about this earlier. I've been on some sites where if they see someone not being safe, they get first verbal, then they'll receive a written, and then after the written, it could be retraining and or removal from the site. So evaluating, because once again, GC, you own that site. That site is you. That's you representing your company, and any at-risk behaviors or incidents would be accounted against you. Toolbox talks being documented. You do that every week. It's nice to use them if you're identifying near misses, incidents, or trends of the work site that you want to address. It's a great way to capture that. Going over fire prevention, making sure the fire extinguishers are out there and they are being inspected and people know how to properly use that. So identifying different scopes of work on site and other hazards is what your orientation is really going to push into.
So now we'll get into the PPE a little bit more. So personal protective equipment, general contractors must ensure that all PPE is of safe design and construction for the work to be performed, is selected to ensure that it has the proper fit. With proper fit, OSHA is really starting to dial in on that. So a good example that they like to use is harnesses. So harnesses have to be properly secured, strapped on, D-rings got to be in the right location. So got to make sure that all of our PPE is properly fitting, because that is something that they are really starting to look at a lot closer. So we want to make sure that we have our people wearing those equipment systems and utilizing them the way that they're intended.
What I've seen too, Josh, on site is I've gone out and seen maybe someone with smaller hands wearing like an extra large glove.
Yep.
Even that goes into the OSHA emphasis on this since January 2025 is it has to be fitting. So we can't just buy the one size fits all,
right,
and say, hey, good luck with it. I think we got it figured out.
Yep.
You really got to slow down. And I even heard safety glasses.
Mm-hmm.
There was a person that had a narrower face and the safety glasses did not fit proper to where they ended up, the company took them in and they got glasses.
Right.
Frames that fit proper.
Yep.
So it is something that has definitely come around. So that, I guess, medium to extra large harness or
right,
one size fits all.
Yep.
If it's not fitting that employee proper, can't wear it.
Yep.
We're going to be possibly putting them at a greater risk or hazard.
And like we saw from our hierarchy triangle, right? PPE is our last line of defense. So we want to make sure that those systems are in place, that they fit properly. Because if anything were to happen, that is our last line of defense. So we're hoping that they work, and we want to make sure that they properly fit. So employee-owned equipment as well. Sunglasses are not today, obviously, and yesterday we got waterlogged, everybody, but we're starting to see sunglasses more and more on job sites. So we have to make sure that if we have employee-owned equipment that they're bringing onto the job site, that we're inspecting it and that it is up to OSHA standards and will be good protection for them. So can't just have the grocery store or the $5 gas station sunglasses. We want to make sure we're using those OSHA ANSI approved safety glasses so that if anything were to happen, like I said, last line of defense, that it's going to work the way that those systems are intended. As far as PPE goes here, as we discussed, PPE is bare minimum, last line of defense. We're going to keep saying it. You'll hear that a lot today, and you'll also hear a lot of documentation. So be consistent in requiring it at all times on your sites and make it become the norm on your site. Just like when we get into our cars to drive to work and home every day, we don't even really think about putting the seatbelt on. It's just automatic. We put it on, push the start button or turn the key, and off you go, right? That's what we're trying to get to with PPE, with all of our crews on sites, is that you don't even think about it. It just becomes the norm. Make sure that you are setting the standard. That's your job site. You have the responsibility on that. So make sure you're holding your crews accountable. Don't do the do as I say, not as I do mentality, because when you start having that and you have poor enforcement and inconsistency, what happens is it breeds a lack of caring and non-compliance. That's where you start seeing some wear it, some don't, and it gets wishy-washy. We want to make sure we have clear standards and that we're holding ourselves to those standards as well. So by creating that good PPE safety habits, hopefully crews will take that with them, not just on your site that they're at currently, but throughout their career, and it just becomes second nature to them.
Another thing I'd like to bring up is what I see on sites when it comes to PPE. I talked about the gloves already.
Yep.
The N95 mask.
Yep.
I mean, a lot of people don't realize that N95 mask is considered a respirator. And with a respirator, you need to ensure they have done the medical online, they've been trained and fit tested on that mask.
Yep.
And another key thing is storage. I see them laying around on the gang boxes, hanging off tools.
Yeah, I was just on a job site last week, and my painter had one of them on while he was sanding, went to lunch break, and hung it up on his little baker scaffold, right? So all that dry fall went right into the mask. So it was one of those things where it was even worse putting that mask back on than not wearing it at all.
Well, and that's at times people just don't fully understand that. Another one are steel-toed shoes.
Mhm.
I'll go to a site and I'll see the silver, the actual steel tip or point or the boot leather worn away from that tip.
Yep.
And really that leather is part of the integrity of the boot. So that cap could potentially go back onto the foot.
Right.
And then when I normally see the worn out toes or the points of the boots, what I run into is the soles are worn out.
Right.
So now it's a slip hazard.
Well, how many times have you seen duct tape their boots together, right? I call them flappers. You know, it looks like Crocs that they're wearing. So
yeah. So again, that's all part of making sure that PPE is good, serviceable, and the employee understands the proper wear and fit for their own safety.
Yep.
So going into the daily safety inspections. So the subcontractor will always be alert to unsafe conditions and act as part of a daily routine. So again, daily routine. When reviewing the daily work routine with the employee, the subcontractor will point out the conditions the employee may encounter. So again, looking into the future, is there going to be weather or other type of activities on site? Daily reminders are part of the daily routine, and they teach OSHA safety standards, best practices, and avoid unsafe acts. The main person responsible for daily on-site inspection is the subcontractor, with the GC reviewing their inspections and conducting a full site inspection themselves. Still, the added cooperation and input concerning safety and that of their coworkers is the field employees. The employees are responsible to report unsafe, poor quality of work to management. Normally your employees are the ones that are actually doing it.
Mhm.
And so again, environment and conditions change. They have to feel that they have the power to stop, adjust, or make those corrections, but we want to make sure they understand. A checklist is an advantage because it is a proactive method for identifying factors known to cause loss. Other benefits is the case of documentation and analyzing and detecting trends. We talked about that earlier. We could use toolbox talks to kind of narrow or stop trends or draw attention to it. Reviewing the checklist from past inspections also help identify reoccurring problems. If a hazard condition continues to repeat, management control is either lacking or not adequately emphasized. Management control measures must be reviewed to clarify responsibilities or add to an individual's role in controlling loss. The subcontractor shall provide their checklists in. So again, at times when we go through, and we'll talk about this a little bit later when the OSHA portion comes up, is what do we do? We normally get safety blind is what I call it. We're walking the site so much that we're not even looking at maybe a quarter of the hazards that are on site. Right. So if we have a checklist, it just makes us go back, reminds us, hey, double check, or maybe a quick refresher of how trenching should be or whatever the hazard might be. So be a good way to work that out. And another thing on the inspection, I brought it up a couple times, is maybe inclement weather and that. So we're going to talk about, are you ready for an emergency? And so when you're looking at this, ask yourself, are you ready for an emergency? Many reactions is, it will never happen here. And so when you hear that, that means they're unprepared for any emergency that they may face. The goal of emergency action plan is to have a plan for the worst case scenario and practice that plan. So if we have let's say we have a tornado plan, case inclement weather tornado, but we haven't walked through it, identified and shown where the active shelters are. During that time, your adrenaline could be rushing to where if you haven't at least walked through it, you might never know.
Right.
And the reason why we want to walk through it is so you can execute it in a manner to protect the lives of everyone at the facility. Just as important, though, a lot of OECS, our training is also on the job site and at work, but a lot of it also can go at home. So we want to make sure at home, make sure you have that emergency action plan. We just had some unique weather, had some tornadoes in the state. So it's real, it's here. So let's make sure we take care of our families too. So when is it necessary? So an emergency action plan will facilitate and organize actions during all possible situations. You have the top two are ones that would be shelter in place. And then you have the lower ones there, the fire, chemicals, and atmosphere. Those would be ones we'd want to evacuate. We want to make sure that we have a good sound plan in place for when we get into the emergency for what the scenario is. So the emergency action plan, we'll talk about this just for a little bit and go through. So the action plan is needed on your site to ensure everyone knows how to react in case of emergency. This may come in many forms, as we just talked about. So what's our notification procedures? Are we using a horn? Are we using the local siren? Word of mouth. That could be, the horn is for tornado. A bell could be for fire. We want to make sure they understand.
Yeah, I've got one of my job sites where everybody gets a text message. So if they're they actually had a injury on their job site, the whole job site received a text message and everything it was kind of a stop in place, right? Yeah. So had a plan in place, it got executed, and that person got the necessary medical attention that they needed, but they had a plan in place and it wasn't just scramble mode.
That's great. I mean, that's part of that site orientation, making sure they're aware of what that is. Routes and exits. We got to make sure that those aren't blocked. People understand them as we're doing construction and moving around the site. Certain exit routes may be blocked or closed off for a period. So we want to make sure we have them clearly marked and people understand. Assembly area, where is the assembly area in case of you having to evacuate outside? Where are they going to go? We need accountability. So every morning the subcontractor should be telling you how many personnel they're having on the job site so you can keep accurate accountability for everyone there. The severe weather shelters, are we going to have a designated area with the actual tornado shelter on it? Or how do we identify to make sure it is easily seen and visible? We talked about the accountability of who's the primary and secondary person that will be taking that accountability. Is it going to be the GC? Will it be the supervisors reporting to the GC? So we got to have a clear way to make sure the communication accountability is key. You should know or always stay on that site until after accountability has been completed and told you can leave. And with the summer months coming in, what's the deal? What's the plan for heat stress? Where's the watering stations? What type of access do we have that? And then also first aid CPR, where the first aid kits are, who on site is certified first aid CPR. That's something that OECS does. We'll go out and we will teach this on site at local companies and or at our training center here, St. Louis Park. but who is certified first aid CPR? And then where is an AED located? Do we have one on the job trailer? If not, they're normally located in your gas stations, your restaurants, and other establishments. So just being aware of where those are located in case of emergency. Local hospital information, that should be put up in the job trailer, should be talked to at the orientation. And normally it has the hospital, the directions, contact, and then again, fire. We just want to hit fire after the big fire that happened at one of the job sites here in Minnesota. Big emphasis to make sure that people understand, don't assume.
So something happens on our job site. So incident investigation. It's a key component of a successful safety program. So it's critical that all incidences, including near hits and misses, are reported immediately and an investigation occurs. So near hits and misses are events where injury or property damage does not occur, but could have if conditions were different. These should also be investigated. So the goal is not to affix blame, but rather to identify root causes and determine appropriate corrective actions so the incident doesn't happen again. So a good example of this would be, say Bob is going up into the ceiling to do some work and didn't choose the right ladder. And now he's straddling the top of the ladder and falls. So luckily Bob didn't get hurt, but it was an incident occurred, right? So we want to make sure that we are reporting that we're getting that documented and wrote down. And we also want to discuss that with our entire team because we want everybody to learn from that. It's not that we want to fix blame. We don't want to just single out Bob and be like, hey, Bob was being an idiot. I'd even keep his name out of it. I would just say, we had one of our guys had an incident, didn't select the proper piece of equipment, didn't use it correctly, and we lucked out and didn't have a severe injury. So making sure that we're doing what we're supposed to. So use that as a teaching tool. So this should be relayed out to your crew. Be honest with yourself. Are your crews reporting any near misses? And is it being documented? That's one of those things that if it's not, this could be a missed opportunity to raise awareness that could prevent those incidences from happening again. So basically, we want you guys just be proactive, not reactive. So incident reporting. Reporting forms and protocols should be discussed with the personnel in charge. So your superintendents, foremen, competent personnel, leads, they should have the forms readily available to them, whether that's online and or hard copies. And then there should be a clear chain of communication. Details are vital when you're filling out these forms. They should be thoroughly filled out, not skipping any details. Make sure you're filling them out correctly so that if they need to be referenced in the future, we have that documentation, and it should be saved and filed away as well.
I know I have some people where if they do have an incident, once the individual is taken care of, incident, accident, that they'll come back, they take a bunch of pictures or videos, and they even do kind of a narrative on the spot. Because at times, again, our adrenaline gets flowing if we see something kind of traumatic out there.
Yep.
And so there's different means to at least capture that information while it's fresh.
Right.
And then you can translate it onto the form. So don't be afraid to kind of gather that stuff up to make sure that you are painting that full picture. Because if I'm asked to come in, which OECS provides, we'll come in and help investigate.
Yep.
A couple maybes, I think, and I'm not sure's
Mm-hmm.
really kind of slow down that investigation to find the root cause compared to pictures and some notes taken right away. So,
yep. And one of the things that when we're giving our trainings and stuff, I always ask the question, are we reporting near misses? And the amount of people that go, no, not really. Or we say something and we go, ooh, that was close, right? But we don't really report it, don't document it. And then what's worse is that doesn't get passed on to the entire company. So people can't learn from that because it's one of those things where even if we can just get it in the back of their head where they go, oh yeah, I remember someone did this that once. I don't want that to be me. So trying to be preventative, right?
Yep. Best detail we can do. So that gets into how do we enforce? So safety policies and procedures are not effective if their use is not enforced. So again, we're the gatekeeper. The GC sets the policy for the site. Safety rules need to be enforced to foster consistent employee performance. It does help morale. People coming in and working on a site, that safety is key. They know that the person cares for them and they'll normally stay focused on work and not have to worry about any potential hazards. Supervisors should be trained to reinforce positive behavior, yet correct negative action and attitudes. So this is in the military. I kind of did this, right? It was always praise in public and discipline in private. So if they're doing something good, even though they might roll their eyes or whatever, but if you say, hey, you know what, Josh, you're doing a great job. I appreciate you coming on the job site, all your PPE and you being safe. I like it. Or that recommendation you gave, we're going to probably implement that. People ultimately like it. If they have something of concern, take them away from everybody so it's not a show. You're not trying to maybe belittle them in front of others.
Right.
So be extremely careful on how you're handling that.
Yeah, I mean, everybody's human, right? Nobody likes to get yelled at. Nobody wants to get yelled at. And then I also call it the dog treat method, right? So I'd rather be told I'm doing good things on my job site, just like with your dog, right? You give him if you good boy, you give him a treat, he's going to keep doing that, right? But if you start yelling at him, he's going to feel bad, but it's one of those things where we want to make sure that we're giving that positive feedback as well, because what that does is it creates I want to get another treat. I want to keep doing it the right way.
There must be consequences for the individuals. We talked about it. What do you have in place? Do you have the written, verbal, the potential retraining, removal? And then you got to stick to it. You can't skip over one person because you worked with them a lot or know them. You have to hold universal to it. So making sure it is proper. And then again, you just got to know here, what are your safety rules? What's your discipline measures? And then who's responsible for enforcing? And ultimately the person who's responsible is everyone on site. Everyone on site down to the lowest person should be responsible for correcting any type of concerns when it comes to safety. OSHA inspection. So this one here is what a lot of people are like, what are they looking for? What are they doing? So one way they look at it is friend to foe. And so what that is, for workers, OSHA is generally seen as a protector of their health and safety. For employers, especially those already committed to safety, OSHA can be an ally by providing clear guidelines, but then you have the foe.
And the foe would be businesses struggling with compliance, right? Especially in industries with extensive regulations such as construction, which we do. So OSHA might feel like an adversary due to cost and complexities. So with the increase of OSHA field agents, and we talked to them quite a bit. It's one of those things they've relayed to us that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when they're going to be on your job sites. So we want to make sure that we are prepared if they come out to our sites.
We look at also what are the investigators allowed to do. So on this one, we want to look at enter. You have the right to deny them access and require them to get a search warrant, but this will not normally end up in your favor. I just talked to an OSHA rep and they said that they have a judge that they can reach out to, and normally within a couple hours they could have that search warrant to be able to come in or have that warrant to come in. And so I'm going to guess they probably really dig into things a lot harder.
That'd be a fine tooth comb.
Yeah. Inspect. They will do a visual inspection on site. They cannot make you tear apart equipment or machinery. So if they come on site as it sits, how they're doing the visual, they can't physically start ripping things apart to try to get inside of that.
And for investigation, so they can enter all areas of the facility or the job site, even authorized personnel only areas. So they have full access. And then questioning, they can privately pull employees to the side. But it's one of those things we want to relay to you guys, that your employees need to know that they have options as well. So they have the option not to say anything. They can easily say, you know what, I'm not comfortable with talking to you. Please go talk to my foreman or soup. They can say, sure, I'll talk to you, but I would like my foreman or soup here. If you're a union contractor, you can reach out to your union reps and have like a BA come out and help represent the workers and be there during it. So there's a couple of different things that you should be relaying to your employees, and that they should know that they don't have to talk to OSHA. But if they want to, they certainly may.
So what an OSHA investigator looks for, they pretty much look for everything. As we talked about prior though, they are going to probably have certain what we call flavors. There's certain go-tos. They might walk on the site. Normally, the way it goes is they'll meet up with the GC and they will start looking and asking questions regarding who's all on site, what trades are on site. Can I look at your aware program? You need to inspect and check and make sure that's good. They'll ask for your HAZCOM program and possibly look at your SDS sheets. Then they're going to look at your orientation and the checklist. And then they'll kind of look at the overall housekeeping of the site. The site looks kind of sloppy or a lot of stuff laying around, or they might even see a trade doing something at risk. It normally then means they're going to get a little deeper into the weeds on the site as a whole. So then you want to be as professional as possible too. You probably won't be the happiest to see them walk on site, but when they come on site, be pleasant, help them out with what they're looking for. Don't volunteer, wait until they ask. And if they come around and if they take pictures or photos and that stuff, those are things that you want to also look at and take pictures and photos with them. While they're looking at the programs and rosters, maybe have someone go take a quick walk around the site just to let everyone know she's there and do any little pick-me-ups. So again, they show up. And we'll talk about this when we get into our little quick reference. But the top 3 things I tell to all my clients is first, ask for their identification. Second of all, ask for their purpose or reason why they're there. If it's enforcement, is it routine? Is it imminent danger? Is it a picture? We got to understand what we're going to be looking at or combating. If it is a multi-sub site and they get called in for one sub, they can do and have the right now to walk the entire site. So back in the day, it was, oh, they're only going to address one thing. Now they can actually walk the entire site and look at it. So we want to make sure that we're dialed in on it.
And like Dwayne was saying with the housekeeping, right? Where and documentation. So the more information we can give them in their hand, hard copy or email, they can see it, right? And it's one of those things that there's nothing better than receiving a phone call from one of our clients that goes, "Hey, OSHA came out today," and I'll go, "Oh, I'm on my way," and they'll go, "Nope, they already left. Everything was great. We're good." So those are the calls that we like to get, right?
And that's one of the big services we provide is we'll try to come on site and be that person that walks around with OSHA and kind of observe and help talk through, because the time safety can be a little complex or a little ins and outs where we come in and we kind of give that good common ground. We work with OSHA fairly often in the state. They know, mainly they know who we are. So we'll take that walk, take the pictures, and have a dialogue with them. Right? They're a person too. They're just doing their job, so you don't have to get all amped up about it. And so then what do they look for? That's when we bring up the top 10. This is what we're seeing out there in the field.
And as you can see from this list, there's a wide variety. So OSHA inspectors, like Dwayne was saying, they're human. They're just like us. Each one of them has a hot button item or a couple of different items. So that they see the worst of the worst, right? That's their job. So they might have seen some fatalities involving a fall. So they're going to really dial in on fall protection. Or if they're involved with, a severe electrocution and burns and stuff like that, where they're going to be looking more dialed in on certain things. So every compliance agent is different. You don't know who you're going to get, and you don't know what their main hot button items are. So that's why we must go through all of our work scopes on our sites, identify and negate potential hazards. So while being cited has potential monetary implications, true overall costs of injury or fatalities on your job sites, that's immeasurable.
Well, and as you see on this top 10, fall protection, right? Having no fall protection is one thing. And then also when you look at the fall protection, no training. So we got to look at the training. We got to look at ensuring that our subs or ourselves have a good understanding of what OSHA is out there looking for. Fall protection is elevated, so you're kind of that beacon, and that's why they come in. But this is what we've seen as the trends out there for them to be coming and doing and fighting potential violations. So I talked about this earlier. This is OSHA at your door, quick card, great little tool. If you are interested and would like one, visit our website. log in there, request it. But this is what I was talking about. Verify the inspector, make sure they identify the purpose that they're on your site. Let your management supervisor know. If you're a client of OECS, you'd let one of us know right away, your representative or associate.
Yep.
And then we'd try to get to that site and or have someone else to help walk through. And that way we can talk through the safety programs, the training and everything we do. Stop the workers if possible at the facility. I've seen some continue working and they actually did an at-risk behavior that drew a little more attention than that. The notes, if you're not a client of OECS, make sure you take notes, whatever the inspector is doing. Make sure you also take the same pictures. Times it's like, well, they took pictures of this area, but what? If you ask when they're taking the pictures, they will let you know, this is what I'm looking at, and this is what I have in question. Keep the OSHA inspector focused. Try to direct them where you want to take them. Don't volunteer. Don't be like, oh, you should look over here and start walking around like you're showing off a place you're trying to sell. Right. You want to make sure it stays focused. What's he there for? Move through it as fast as possible. Then you'll sit back and you'll have normally a closing meeting, and then you'll understand what the potential violations are in that. So again, if you want this, go to the website, request it. We can get that out to you. In summary, we talked about GCs. You got to own your site. It is up to you to take that ownership, lead by example, hold everyone accountable. I know at times you work with the same crews year in and year out, and you just start understanding, well, that's so-and-so. We can't do that. You got to start, the main safety starts with you. If you walk out without a hard hat on and walk the site, others are going to start not wearing the hard hat. So make sure you stay on top of it. Documentation, like Josh and I have talked about, must have that. Your site orientation, toolbox talks, what you require some subcontractor safety programs.
And to piggyback on top of that documentation as well, we don't want it just on our job sites. We actually want to do the documentation portion in the bidding process. So we want to make sure that we're properly vetting those subcontractors that we're working with. And then on top of that, if they're subbing out the work as well, we want to make sure we're vetting those subcontractors, because 99% of the time we are the main controlling agent on our job sites. So if they were to get cited for violations, there's potential that those citations would come on to us as the GC. So we want to make sure we have our ducks in a row and that we are properly vetting our contractors up front, and then also keep on going with site orientations, toolbox talks, JHAs like we discussed today, making sure that, like we said, if you guys get anything out of this training, documentation, the more the better. Because if you don't have documentation, it probably didn't happen.
That is exactly right. I mean, I cannot count on my fingertips on how many times OSHA's hit that and they just haven't had it. Well, we've done it, but we don't have the documentation. So that's great. And that, and touching on the subs. So also inspecting of the job site, mentioned earlier, the subcontractor should be doing their inspection, but it's going to take the GC to hold them accountable and do their own inspection too. So
one of the things I used to get yelled at was get out of the job trailer. So turn the computer off, step away from your emails, and make sure you walk your site, know what's going on with your site. So pass that along to your supes, your foreman. Get out of the job trailer. That's your site. You're controlling it. You should know what's going on at all times with that, and keeping your guys safe, because you want them going home 10 fingers, 10 toes, and then we want them coming back and help get that project done and make that money to keep everybody working.
Yep. And then, the inspection with the checklist inspection sheet, that way it keeps you fresh. We showed the top 10 violations. That'd probably be on my check sheet for sure, and any other type of hazards you've run into or trends you're seeing. And also, again, we normally go towards our comfort areas. If we're really good at trench and excavating, we're going to go there and kind of study it, but we're not familiar with scaffolding, so we're going to stay away.
Yep.
The check sheet makes you walk the whole site and make sure that you're looking at all different components. So bottom line, you own the site and its safety. So we're going into questions now. I'd like to thank all that are out there that have sat in through this. Hopefully you get some good information, good tidbits. Josh and I are always available for any questions.
All right, there are a couple questions and you might have answered them already, but just want to make sure that we get them repeated. Is the general contractor held liable if a subcontractor violates a safety rule or standard on their site?
Yeah, they're gonna be the ones that will be questioned and dug and looked and possibly carry the same violation. I had one where a gentleman was on a roof and dropped his harness early from the access point and walked, and someone took a picture. The GC carried a violation for fall protection as well as the subcontractor. So this is where the documentation comes in. We've talked to them, we've trained them, we've warned them. Those are things that can help out, but yes, they can be cited for a subcontractor violation.
And
Thank
the
you.
big thing with that is if we're seeing those hazards, we're doing our job site walks and we're seeing those hazards, that we are bringing those up. And then that's one of those things that can help us as well and make sure we're documenting that as well.
Wonderful. How often must a GC inspect the site for hazards, and is this documentation required?
You want to inspect your job sites daily. You should first thing before you even get going on the day, and then after you do that inspection, you want to relay that out to your crew. Documentation, like we said, you cannot have enough of it. So doing a daily JHA where you guys are going through, even if you're doing the same thing, right? We're going to be back up in the scissor lift, tearing a ceiling grid out or something like that, where you can put in there same thing, right? And you just duplicate it, repeat it. But yeah, you want to make sure that you are inspecting your job sites daily because those are your sites and it's your responsibility.
And we walk through and probably do a visual, but document the inspection and then multiple times. I recommend multiple times through the day because that scope of work changes or they're in different areas. So again, Josh said it really good. Get away from the computer, get away from emails, and make sure you're walking. Being a present GC will help make that site safer compared to one that is not present.
Okay. Another question. What should I do if I'm getting frequent OSHA visits? Any recommendations?
I can touch base on this because I actually have a client that has been multiple things going on with it, and they're doing all the right things. It's one of those things that it just depends where you are, right? If you have a crane up in the air, if you got guys on the roof, that is a big red beacon saying, "Hey, look at us, we're over here." And they don't need a reason to stop. They can stop, and they're not going to necessarily stop on your job site. It might be in the parking lot across, and they're just going to watch for a little while. And they got their cameras, they can zoom in, and they're going to see what's going on. And if there's things that pop up, they can come onto your job site. So yeah, to get back with it, you want to make sure that if you're getting multiple, you can reach out to OSHA as well and ask for consultations. I've got a couple of clients that use that. It's a fantastic tool. And we go out to the job site and sit in on those. And it's one of those things that it helps out contractors a lot. Some don't want to do that. So you just want to make sure that you have your safety programs in place. And like we were saying, and we're probably up to a word count of over 1,000. Document. And if you have that documentation, that'll go a long way in helping you when you're getting those OSHA visits or phone calls.
Well, and also remember the second thing that we talked about for the three things they should ask if OSHA shows up. One's credentials, two is the reason or purpose. They'll have to state if they've observed, they got a call, if they see imminent danger, received a picture. They will disclose those reasons. So just make sure that your GC, if you're having them visit a lot, understands that, hey, you can ask them why and should find out why they're there.
Yep.
So great question.
Awesome. And then there was just one guest attendee that shared a statement on that liability question. I wanted to share that with everybody.
Okay.
This this attendee said that they have a prime/subcontract that has a flow down provision for violations in their agreement. So that's a good thing to state when you're putting paperwork together. So
Perfect.
I want to thank everyone again. I do want to, as we do with all of our webinars, I'd like to launch a survey. Just tells us how we did, rank the information that was shared. And if there's anything else that we can do better, please put that into the chat. We put these together for our clients, our association members, any safety professionals out there that are just looking for additional information or support. I'll let this chat go, or excuse me, the poll go here for a little bit longer. All right. Excellent. Share. Thank you again, everybody that participated today. If anyone does have any specific questions, please feel free to reach out to Dwayne or Josh directly. Their contact information is on this slide. And then they'd be happy to either follow up with you with an email or a phone call. We just rather get your questions answered and avoid that area of unknown. Our next webinar will be this fall. We take the summer off because it gets really busy, but we'll be doing a webinar on industrial hygiene in the workplace on Thursday, September 11th at our normal time of 11 to noon. Again, OECS does provide a total safety solution for you. If there's ever any questions that you need, even if it's just a review of your programs, or do we have everything in place? Many times a gap analysis just helps identify not only you, the employer, of things that you're missing, but a great conversation. And sometimes you have many things that are wonderful in place already, and we can just then support that for you. Again, our office is in the Twin Cities, and then we have our Fargo regional office as well. I'll thank our partners one more time. Without you and sharing this with all of your valuable members, it helps us get the word out. Tri-State Safety Association, Minnesota Precision Manufacturing Association, South Central Safety Association, the BIA of the Red River Valley, ABC, Minnesota North Dakota chapter, Northern Region Association of Safety Professionals, Build Connection, and Lakes Area Manufacturers Alliance. All right, I'd like to thank you again for attending and hope everyone has a wonderful day. Thank you so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks.